Bernie Sanders has been campaigning, and recently he went on Fox News to justify why he should be using a private jet. Let's listen.
5 rallies in a week. The only way you can get around to talk to 30,000 people. Think I'm going to be sitting on a waiting line at United, waiting, 30,000 people are waiting? That's the only way you can get around. No apologies for that. That's what campaign travel is about. We've done it in the past. We're going to do it in the future.
Right, so no apologies for using a private jet to go on campaign. I mean, I personally don't have a problem with it, but then, as End Wokeness is pointing out, I'm not a socialist, and socialists are a bit beyond parody on this. And the thing is, it's a bit of a long-standing thing. So, I mean, you can find clips from 2015 where he's talking about the millionaires and billionaires.
Proliferation of millionaires and billionaires, while at the same time, the United States of America has the highest rate of childhood poverty.
Blah, blah, blah. And then you get fast forward to something he posted very recently, 2 months ago.
What we have right now in Washington, let me be very clear, is a government of the billionaire class, by the billionaire class, and for the billionaire class.
What happened to the millionaire class that you happen to be a part of because you can afford private jets? And so, okay, I'm not here to poke fun at the hypocrisy of socialists and Bernie Sanders, although it is funny that, the more wealth Bernie Sanders accrued. He got a third house recently, which is by a lake somewhere. It's like, oh my God, man, I'm still like some sort of plebeian. I'm still living in one house. What am I doing? What a loser I am. I should become a socialist so I can afford $200,000 sports cars like Hassan Piker here and $3 million mansions. And what I love about this is just how much he is mogging his own supporters. Listen, you socialists, I'm driving around in this tiny Porsche. In fact, now that I think about it, it's a bit weird that such a big man wants such a small car, right? He's a big guy, Hassan. He's got this really tiny car. He looks kind of clownish when he gets into it. In fact, we'll get to that in a second. He looks look, he just looks way too big for it. It's like he's getting into a child's toy or something. But anyway, okay, I'm not here to criticize Hassan Piker's taste in cars. But there is something profoundly unreal about the socialist who flies around in the private jet, the socialist who drives around in the $200,000 Porsche, the socialists who are constantly going on tax the rich, tax the rich. So, okay, but you are the rich. And if you are concerned about the poverty of children, you could actually do this little thing called charity. But like I said, I'm not here to laugh at the hypocrisy of the socialist, even though it is funny when he's streaming from his $3 million mansion, complaining that there are poor people out there and no one's helping them. I mean, you could live in a much more moderate house and then actually do charity work. But again, obviously not going to. But the issue that I wanted to talk about is the disconnect between fantasy and reality when it comes to left-wing politicians and their activists, and the reason that there's just no cut-through on all of this. Like, Bernie Sanders and Hassan Piker have a fan base, right? Their fan bases are large, millions of people, but they still only represent actually around probably about 10 to 15% of the US public at most. Like, they're still actually quite niche. They're still actually quite small. And so why isn't the message of just helping out the poor, bro, resonating with others? Well, I think one of the issues is the lavish lifestyles that the socialists themselves are living. Because if your actual daily practice of life is not in line with the things that you profess, then not only are you a hypocrite, obviously, but there's a consequence, a second and third order consequence of the act of you professing one thing but living in a different way. And that is to simply make your message seem like a vanity belief. It makes it seem like it's something that you would suggest for others but not for yourself. And the problem that entails, and that brings to the fore, is if this is such a good idea, why don't you live by it? If this is such a worthy thing that everyone should be doing, why aren't you doing it? Because I'm a married father of 4, and I live in a normal house, and I own a business, and I get up and go to work every day, and I live the values that I profess. And so I can, at least from a position of authenticity, say, this is a good life, and you should, honestly, if you're a young man watching this, a young woman watching this, I think that everyone around me is pretty happy generally, and is doing fairly well, and my family seem very happy, and everything seems to be going quite well. And I think this is probably the best that the average man like myself can do, and this is an achievable goal, and you should probably aim for it. And so to do that, you just have to be diligent, you have to be hardworking, you have to be kind to the people around you, you have to just live as a decent person and focus on those people closest to you and the quality of the relations that you have, and you could end up with what I've got. Now, you could also say, okay, that's great, but I want the $200,000 Porsche and the private jets, so I'm going to become a professional socialist. And to that I say, well, fill your boots, it's up to you. You're the one, it's your life, you can live it as you like. But I can't help but notice that the socialists don't seem that happy, right? Hassan Piker is a great example of this. He seems angry all the time. He seems to kind of hate his job. He seems to kind of hate the people around him. And he seems to hate the fact that he lives in this contradiction where he professes a belief that he doesn't live. And so he's always miserable looking. Always miserable looking. Whereas I get up in the morning and I'm like, okay, great, I've got another day ahead. Wonderful. Hopefully things go quite well, and I'm going to enjoy seeing everyone that I see. I'm going to enjoy doing the things I do. And I'm not unhappy to be living my life. I'm very happy to be living my life because my life is authentic. I'm not perfect. I make plenty of mistakes. There are times I have to apologize for things, etc., etc. I'm not saying that in any way that anything is perfect, but I'm just very happy with what I have. And I'm very happy that what I say matches up to the things that I do. Whereas the socialists, what they're saying sails over the actual things that they're doing. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure materially they're very satisfied. Like, I don't have a $200,000 Porsche. I invest my money into my children and private education instead. But that I'm happy doing that. I'm very proud to do that, actually. I don't really think I'd want a $200,000 Porsche. I'd buy something else if I wanted a nice fancy car. But the point being is I'm not ashamed of my life. I'm very proud of my life. Whereas the socialist is in some way fundamentally ashamed of the fact. And that's why Bernie Sanders looks quite angry. He's like, no, I have to use private jets. I make no apologies for this. Like, well, but you do know there's a reason that the criticism is biting, and it's because as a socialist, should you be doing this? Socialism is kind of like the modern form of Christianity, right? And so the modern socialists who are preaching it, there's always going to be this tension that underlies it. Well, why are you so rich if socialism is so good? Why haven't you given away your riches and followed socialist Jesus into poverty to help people? Why don't you give away your money to help the poor? And they've got lots of excuses, lots of copes about this. But the point that I'm making is that this contradiction, this tension, actually won't hold forever. It becomes evident that this is a glaring and immoral hypocrisy that just cannot sustain itself. And we've seen examples of this happening through history. I mean, for example, with the Cathar heresy against the Catholic Church in the 13th century, one of the major critiques that the Cathars, who call themselves the good Christians and lived in abject poverty like Jesus, one of their major critiques against the Catholic Church was, well, look at all of the riches you have. Do you think that Jesus would approve of this? And the Catholics were a bit caught in the hop, being like, okay, I may be wearing these beautiful robes, and I might covered in jewels, and I might have a retinue of armed men, and I might have a castle and a cathedral. I mean, Jesus didn't live like that. So the criticism is biting, even if they go around professing the word of God as they understood it. And if someone else professes the word and lives by it, well, they become way more persuasive, don't they? And they start to undermine your own power and your own prestige and your own morality. And this is why the Catholics could make no headway in the Languedoc, where the Cathars were operating. They would go down there and try and preach Catholicism, and they'd be met by hordes of angry villagers who are like, no, you're fakes, you're frauds. Look at you. You are such an obvious fake and fraud. And this same effect happens to Hassan Piker and Bernie Sanders, where people in the comments sections, people on Twitter, people on Facebook, you see them posting, well, you're just a rich kid playing at being a socialist. You're pretending because you spout socialist nonsense, but you live like the most arch capitalists that I've ever seen. And so I'm actually not inclined to take your criticisms of capitalism very seriously, since you're deliberately and willfully making out so well out of it. And this is a real critique. This is a real pertinent critique. And it makes socialism look to most people like the Catholic Church looked to the Cathars and the people of Languedoc in the 13th century. No, I reject this. I reject this out of hand. Now, the only answer that the Catholic Church had to the Cathars was a crusade, was violence. They had to just stamp them down and wipe them out, which they did. But the issue itself wasn't resolved. And I think, honestly, it's probably the reason later on that the Protestant Reformation kicked off. If the Catholic Church had sorted itself out and accepted the legit criticism and actually begun to live like Jesus, then maybe things would have been different. But either way, it's no point relitigating history on that. The point I'm making overall with this, though, is just, why would I listen to a hypocrite when it comes to morality or politics? Why would I listen to the multi-millionaire socialist who's like, you know what, guys, we need to tax the rich, we need to redistribute the wealth, we need to make sure that the means of production are collectively owned, but I'm going to use my means of production to make millions of dollars and swan around in my private jets and my multi-million-dollar mansions, and I'm just going to preach down to you, the plebs, and I'm going to be angry while I do it. I'm going to be generally quite upset about this contradiction that I can't resolve, but I'm definitely not going to give up the materialistic life that I have earned preaching socialism. Because I can preach socialism all day, but for some reason I just don't want to live socialism. And the question that is on everyone's lips is, look, if socialism is so good, why don't you live it? And the fact that they're clinging to their materialistic excess shows us that, in reality, what they're saying is capitalism is good. They love capitalism. They're very successful at capitalism. And they are not going to give up the fruits of it, because giving up the fruits of it would mean they would have to live like you.